drop it into third? It's getting really windy now, huh? You know, the grip is pretty good. I got pretty good levels of grip here. Got a little bit floaty at the top of that hill, but shoot. So now I just have the car in third gear, and I'm kind of hitting the gas a little bit as I exit the turns. And dude, this is pretty fun. I know in the last video I mentioned I got a lot of body rolls, so check this out. I mean, it does roll, but I should give it some credit. It's still pretty tight. I mean, it rolls, but it's not any more than a first generation Miata rolls. It might roll a little bit less than that, actually. If I think back to a stock, first generation Miata, those things had a ton of body roll. You turn it a little bit, and I swear it's like lifting off the ground on one side. I'm full throttle in third gear right now, 4,500 to 5,000 RPM. It feels pretty good. Hi everybody. I'm out on a little Sunday drive in the foothills of California, Northern California I should say, and yeah, it's the perfect weather. It's about 65 degrees outside, sunny. It rained yesterday, so there isn't a lot of pollen in the air, and this is exactly what this car's for. Nice little cruise. And of course, since I have the Z3 2.3, which is the 2.5 liter inline six, it makes plenty of torque. I never feel like I really need to downshift. It doesn't have that buzzy four-cylinder sound like a 1.9 liter Z3. Just a nice, relaxed, lazy cruiser. Like, I'm not even trying to go fast. It's just a lot of fun. You got the wind blowing, got the sun out. Like, there's nothing more I can ask for right now. Maybe it's because I'm an old man now. I'm not even looking to turn fast or do anything. I'm just a boring old man. But this car's a lot of fun. I know in the last video I mentioned I got a lot of body rolls, so check this out. I mean, it does roll, but I should give it some credit. It's still pretty tight. I mean, it rolls, but it's not any more than a first generation Miata rolls. It might roll a little bit less than that, actually. If I think back to a stock, first generation Miata, those things had a ton of body roll. You turn it a little bit, and I swear it's like lifting off the ground on one side. My Z3, I think it's on the original shocks because the bump stops are all tore up. If I hit a bump really hard, it'll bottom out the suspension. So I'm pretty sure my shocks are worn out. And I'm debating whether or not I should replace the shocks. But as of right now, like on this road, going back and forth like this, it handles just fine. It sticks pretty good. I mean, it probably sticks better than a first generation Miata would, right? I mean, it probably helps that I have Michelin Pilot Sports on this car, on the 16-inch wheels compared to, the 14-inch Miatas. But basically, I spent Miata money buying the Z3, so I feel like I got a really good bargain. I got a lot of car for my money, spending $5,500 total so far on this car. And going up roads like this, I can just cruise in fifth gear at 2,000 RPM. And I'm just barely feathering the throttle. That's more than enough power to make it up this hill. Whereas in a Miata, I would probably be in fourth gear, buzzing along. Actually, I had a first gen Miata a while back, before we had kids, and I used to drive this road all the time. And I would have to be in fourth gear most of the time just because that first generation Miata only makes about 105 horsepower, and even less torque, so you gotta keep it revved up to really have fun with it. But the Z3 is just a nice little cruiser in fifth gear. And really, I say the suspension is too floaty or, rolls too much on the Z3, but now that I drive it more, it's really not bad. It's still pretty good. gas, dude. Like, I don't even bone out or like try to peel out in this car. It's just a nice, lazy cruiser. Like, it's awesome. But the proportions are nice and tight. I mean, if I turn hard and just hit the brakes a little bit, the rear can slide out a tiny bit, but the traction control kicks in, but it's not like really it doesn't super get in the way. It still lets me slide out a little bit. It doesn't really get intrusive. Like, I don't hear the ABS going crazy or anything. It's a really nice traction control, actually. We got this little bend in the road. Should I drop it into fourth? Yeah, I could drop it into fourth, I guess. I'm at 3,200 RPM. And the downshifts are really nice and effortless. Back into fifth. Just really smooth driving car. Like, I love it. It'd be nicer if I didn't have this RAV4 in front of me. Because, you know, I'd like to go a little bit faster on this road, but shoot, I'm just here cruising. And I don't know if you saw that downshift into fourth. It's just really smooth. I stab the clutch and I stab the gas real quick and drop it into fourth. Effortless, right? And the clutch meet, like, I'm having a really good time. It's really predictable. With 190,000 miles on the original clutch, it still grabs pretty well. Like, the clutch doesn't slip at all. But the only thing is, the clutch engagement is a little bit high. And that took me a little time to get used to because I haven't driven a car with this many miles on the clutch in a long time. Probably since I was in high school. So it's a little bit different for me because I'm used to the clutch engaging at, you know, like the top third of the pedal travel, right? But I want to say this probably starts engaging at like the top fifth of pedal travel, you know, so you just got a little bit of leeway there. But, you know, after driving it a few hundred miles, I've gotten accustomed to it. It's not that bad. But really, the more I think about it, if I do anything on this car, I'll probably change all the shocks out next. But even if I didn't do anything, this car's still totally enjoyable and totally drivable. And like, I took all those parts to my mechanic, right? And he was like, so what if the water pump leaks a little? So what if the valve cover gasket leaks a little? You can still drive it. You know, he was saying it's perfectly drivable for the time being. And maybe give it a year and then replace the water pump and valve cover gasket. But you know, I've read all the horror stories about water pump failures on this car, so that's definitely something you don't want to hold out on in the Z3, right? Because the last thing you want to do is overheat a motor, right? And have a water pump blow up on you, right? So you got to be pretty careful with that. But the valve cover gasket seeping, that's not really hurting anybody, right? I mean, we're talking about a few drops of oil, and I was checking in on the oil level. This motor doesn't burn any oil, and even with the valve cover gasket leak, there was no like measurable difference in the oil level, so I think I was fine. But anyways, I got it all done just because I don't like having anything on the back of my mind. I like my cars really well maintained. Oh man, this is pretty fun right here. Woohoo! Should I drop it into third? It's getting really windy now, huh? You know, the grip is pretty good. I got pretty good levels of grip here. Got a little bit floaty at the top of that hill, but shoot. So now I just have the car in third gear, and I'm kind of hitting the gas a little bit as I exit the turns. And dude, this is pretty fun. And I'm not even gonna bother upshifting or downshifting anymore. This whole section, I can just ride this out in third gear and just have a good time. Like, I'm not trying to be super aggressive because I'm afraid I'm gonna lose traction. But it's really all right. I'm accelerating a little bit out of here, but it drives real nice, dude. Like, it just feels like such a solid car. That's what's so surprising about this. I mean, a $5,000 car, you know, that's 23 years old. You don't expect it to drive this nice, right? It's got 190,000 miles on it. And it just revs up so smooth and it's so nice. I braked a little bit going into this turn. probably a little bit too late. But I'm not trying to spin out and die on this road, right? So I'm not going to drive too hard. Here I go. I'm accelerating a little bit in fourth gear. I'm at about 65 miles an hour. I think it's a 30 mile an hour speed limit in this area, so I mean, I don't want to go too crazy. But really, this car's keeping up with these turns just fine. The Z3 is freaking awesome, man. Like, I love this car. It's so fun. Drop it into third. I was a little bit late releasing the clutch on that shift. You know, I was accelerating a little bit harder right there. You know, I was full open throttle at 4,000 RPMs. I really haven't revved up this engine more than like 4,500 RPMs because I find that the top end is not that strong anyways. It kind of has a power band that goes like up, that kind of slowly falls down. So I find shifting at like 3,500 or 4,000, that seems to be the kind of sweet spot because I still hit the torque and there isn't that much more power up top. But that's just my opinion. That's what my butt tells me. My butt tells me that at 5,000 RPMs, I'm not making that much more power. Maybe it is, but you know, I don't really care. I'm just having a good time sitting right at 3,000 RPMs. Woohoo! I'm full throttle in third gear right now. 4,500 to 5,000 RPM. It feels pretty good. And it was really smooth too, really nice. Ooh, going a little faster than I'd like on this turn. I'll probably slow down a little bit. Well, I'm catching up to the cars in front of me anyways. But yeah, it's plenty of power. But for lazy cruising, again, I don't really feel the need to rev this motor up. I'm totally happy just cruising, just around 2,500, 3,000 RPMs. Around there, it feels good. All right, guys, well, my drive's getting kind of boring with all these cars in front of me, so I'm gonna say goodbye. I gotta say, even on the stock shocks with 190,000 miles on them, completely worn out, my Z3 still handles pretty good. I'll probably change the shocks at some point, but I'm still enjoying the car as it is. And you saw kind of the silliness I was driving through earlier, and it still drives pretty good. Anyways, I'll see you later. Thanks for joining us. Bye.